Okay. All right. I'll tell it. Okay. So, picture it. The year was 2018. The year was 2018. And I was making arrangements to go and meet up with my friend Rosie. And Rosie was flying over from the UK. And our plan was to meet up in Cairns. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar with Australia, let me bring this up here. Cairns is right the fuck up here. Really, really far north. And for reference, I can do this without doxing myself because Australia's a fucking huge ass country. I live in this area. This kind of area in Australia. This is where I live. About 4 hours inland from Sydney. So my plan was to take 3 days to drive from where I live in New South Wales up to Cairns. And I worked it out that it would be about 25 hours of driving to get from around here all the way up to Cairns. It's a long ass fucking way. Anyway, so I had a car at the time and I was just like, okay, no big deal. I'll, you know, it's a long drive. I'll service it. I'll change all the oil out. I'll make sure the tires are all good. Fucking, you know, do all the normal shit. Do all the regular maintenance. And I set off on my journey. 26 hours, 3 days, 26 hours worth of driving. No big deal. Easy peasy. And I was feeling confident at this point because I was just like, ah, man, no big deal. And I had this this old 2000 model Daewoo Nubira, which is an absolute beast of a car as well. Like, holy shit, that thing could move. Not really. And so I set off on this journey. I worked it out. I was like, okay, if I can do like 8 hours driving a day, I should be fine. Like 8 hours driving, it's not that much driving. Like, have a couple of breaks in there. You know, it'll be easy. It'll be long days, but it'll be easy. But the first day I drove for about 5 hours and I got to a place, or near a place called Lightning Ridge. And I got a migraine. I was just like, fuck man, I can't keep driving. I'm going to have to stop and I'm going to have to, you know, get a hotel or something. So I got a hotel and I slept off my migraine. But the next morning I was just like, fuck, well, I've just lost, you know, I've just lost like three or so hours from what I planned on doing yesterday. So I'm going to have to make it up today. So I got up at like, it would have been about 5:30. So I got up at 5:30 and I started driving again, right? And, drive for about, I don't know, about like 40 minutes out of Lightning Ridge. And I stopped to take a piss at the side of the road, get out of the car, do my business, and then jump back into the car. And I go to turn it on and it makes like it turns over once and then just dies completely. Completely fucking dead. Dead as a tack. And it's just fucking, you know. Yeah. And I mean, Lightning Ridge is not a big place. Like, I think Lightning Ridge is the place where people in Australia who don't want to be found go to not be found. Like, it is a small ass fucking tiny town. I didn't piss on the car, Lee. Please. Anyway. And I'm like 40 minutes out of it. But fortunately, I have service. So, after like spending probably about half an hour, 40 minutes trying to work out what was wrong with the car, I call a tow truck or to get towed back to Lightning Ridge. And luckily they were pretty quick, so they towed me back into town. And I'm talking to once I get there, I'm talking to the mechanic and I'm saying like, look, I really need to get onto the road ASAP. I'm willing to pay you guys whatever it takes to get back on the road as soon as possible. And old mate, turns out Lightning Ridge, they have like one mechanic and they are flat out all the time. Because like everybody within like 400 kilometers of there has to go there. So they are always busy, it turns out. And he's just like, look, man, I'm really sorry, but I can get to you today. It'll be probably like later this afternoon. And I was just like, look, man, like well, the thing is, Stromwolf, is that I had put down deposits on like skydiving and like scuba diving and shit like that. I had like, you know, probably $1,500 worth of deposits down. And that was like for the next day. Like if I didn't get up to Cairns, I was already out of pocket. And I was just like, fuck it. I'm happy to fucking pay, you know? Anyway, so I hung around and old mate was just like, oh, look, I'll do it. Like after I talked to him for a bit, he's like, look, I'll do it later this morning. So it got around to about 10 o'clock at this point. And old mate comes out to me and he's just like, yeah, look, it's not great. Apparently like, some electrical part had blown and had taken out a whole bunch of other electrical bits, and they had to order in some parts for it. And I was just like, oh, fuck, okay, all right, well, no big deal. No big deal. Can you get the parts in? It's like, yeah, we can get the parts in, no big deal. Like, it's not a problem. But it will take us a couple of days. I'm like, well, I don't have a couple of days. And he's like, yeah, but we need to pick him up from the town over. Now, when we say the town over, out there, the nearest town to Lightning Ridge, where this part was, is a town called Dubbo. And that's about 3.5 hours drive. And I said to this guy, I will literally pay one of your guys to drive there and pick up that part to install it today. $300 up front. I'll pay him $300 cash on top of anything. And then he's just like, nah, man, I need all my guys here. I need all my guys. I can't do it. And so I'm just like, I'm like fucked at this point. So I'm like, okay, what else can I do? So I start looking at like, you know, buses and planes and stuff like that, but it was all like stupidly expensive. It probably would have cost me like at least $1,000 to get up there from where I was. And then back down, because the plan was that I would drive up to Cairns. We would spend like a week in, like a few days in Cairns, and then we would start doing like a road trip back down the coast of Australia for over a couple of weeks. So by the time like we'd done a couple of weeks of traveling without my car, it probably would have worked out that we'd spend like thousands of dollars, and we would have been a lot more restricted in what we could do. That's what you think, Boom Shakalaka. I lost that years ago. Anyway, so I was just like, I was like despair at this point. I was just like, fuck, what the fuck am I gonna do? And then I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just buy a new car. I'll just buy a whole new fucking car and continue on my journey. And so that's what I did. I started looking around at cars. There was a lot of really shit cars. Turns out in a really tiny outback Australian town, there's a lot of really, really shit, poor quality cars. No, this is for a friend, Stromwolf. Rosie is a good friend of mine. Yeah, basically the thing that I was worried about, Stromwolf, is that I put down a deposit for scuba diving the day after I was meant to get up there. And then a couple of days after that for skydiving, and a few other bits and bobs. So it was going to cost me a shitload of money if I didn't get up there. So I missed out. That was like one of the main concerns. And also because it would have ruined Rosie's trip as well, because she was flying from the UK to come and do this road trip in Australia, right? So without my car, I kind of fucked everything. Anyway, hey Ed, how you doing? I was doing it for myself, Mel, just as much as I was doing it for Rosie. Let's not be, you know, let's not get this twisted here. Couldn't you play the song while telling the story though? Fuck you, Dezo. No. I can't do it. I can't listen to that song. So anyway, so I'm looking at cars to buy, and I look at a whole bunch of the cars and they're just absolute shit. I was like, I still have to drive like another, you know, several thousand kilometers or many thousand kilometers, like literally many thousands of kilometers. That's not even exaggeration. That is literally how far I still had to drive. was thousands of kilometers. And all of these cars I looked at in Lightning Ridge were just absolutely dead on their feet, knackered. There was no way they were going anywhere. And I was like ready to give up. So I go back towards the mechanics. And I say to the guy just out of desperation, like, hey, do you know anybody who's looking to sell a car at the moment? And he was like, oh yeah, one of my guys is looking to sell a car. He's got a ute that he's wanting to sell. In Australian, ute it stands for utility. It's like a pickup truck for Americans. Yeah, so this guy's looking to sell a ute, and he's like, oi, Ridge, there's a bloke out here who wants to see your ute. And this guy, he was like born and raised Lightning Ridge. His parents loved Lightning Ridge so much that they named their son Ridge after Lightning Ridge. Which is concerning. I think is perhaps the right terminology. It's concerning. But it turns out Ridge is a really, really nice dude. Like, Ridge is a, like, absolutely fucking stand-up dude. And he's like, yeah, come on, man. Fucking come and have a look. Yeah, see what you think. You know, I was just like, oh, how long have you had it? Blah, blah, blah. Talking to him about it. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. And it turns out Ridge has recently moved back to the Ridge, as the locals call it. Because he was up in Queensland, but apparently he kept getting into trouble. Up in Queensland, so he had to move back down to New South Wales because I think he had some warrants outstanding on him. Anyway, so Ridge showed me the ute. I had to look over it. I mean, it was this old, like, 1991 Ford ute, and it was pretty banged up. No, sorry, not Ford ute. It was a Holden ute. It's an old Holden Commodore ute. And it was pretty banged up, but mechanically it looked alright. It was okay. It looked like it held together alright. And I said to him, like, Ridge, do you reckon this would get up to Cairns? He's like, yeah, probably. I'm like, fucking good enough. No, it didn't smell of dead bodies. Actually, it was pretty... Mostly clean. He's like, yeah, probably. It's like, yeah, good enough. And I was just like, how much do you want for it? He's like, oh, $2.5 grand? Like, fuck off, mate. You're dreaming. He's like, yeah, I probably am. And he's just like, shit, yeah, you're right, Nike. It did smell of... I've forgotten that. It did smell of petrol. That's right. That was the only thing. That was the only thing that put me off. Is it smelled of petrol. That's kind of a scary detail that I'd forgotten, but I think I may have inhaled enough petrol fumes that I'd forgotten that. But you're exactly right, Nike. Yeah. Because this whole time I'd been messaging Nike and I'd be messaging Rosie, just like, this is what's going on. This is my life right now. I think, Nike, you probably would have been like, head in your hands, just like, for fuck's sake, Drongo, what the hell? But yeah, so, yeah, sorry, there was a faint smell of petrol in the cabin. But I didn't worry about it too much, because I was just like, ah, fuck it, whatever. You know, no big deal. It was a day. It was a day. Not really, Mel. No, this is not gonna be how I met your mother kind of stories. No, I don't, Mel. Spoiler alert, I don't. So, anyway, he's like, oh, I want $2.5 grand for it. I'm like, nah, fuck off. So, we end up going back and forth for a bit. He knows he's got me fucking bent over. Like, I've got no other choice. So I talk him down to 1900. And so he's like, in the end, he's like, yep, no worries, 1900 today. We'll sign over the papers and you can be on your way. I'm like, okay, fucking sweet. So I get the cash. Yeah, I know, Mel. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. Who would have thought that males and females can be in a platonic relationship? Yeah, crazy. Anyway. So, So yeah, so I buy this ute. I buy this piece of shit ute. Let me find a picture of it for you guys, so we can illustrate the story here. Let me find a little picture of you. I'll try not to dox myself as well, because I'm gonna have to look on Facebook to find this thing. I have an album. So anyway, I've had a pretty good look over this ute at this point, just to kind of suss out whether it's mechanically sound. You know, like I'm not a mechanic or anything, but I know a bit about cars, so I felt reasonably comfortable in my judgment, besides the petrol smell, that I was buying a not a total dud. I was reasonably confident in that estimation. Now, the one thing that was kind of annoying about my old car that was at the workshop, the Daewoo, was the fact that it didn't have an aux port in the radio. So I brought a whole shitload of CDs with me because I wanted to listen to music the whole way. Like, I'm somebody that loves to listen to music in the car, like have a bit of a sing along, you know. It's good times, happy times. That's my jam, you know. One of the annoying things about the Daewoo is it didn't have an aux port, but one of the things I was actually kind of like low-key excited about in this ute was that the only thing that was new in it was the stereo. That it had a brand new radio in there, which had an aux port. And I was just like, fuck yeah, dude. I can plug in my phone, I can charge it. Because at this point I'd been on my phone like for a good portion of the morning. It was probably about midday at this point. Like a lot has happened before midday that day. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I can charge my phone and I can listen to music at the same time. It'll be awesome. Fantastic. So I didn't bring an aux cord with me. So I went and drove the ute into town to a little shop, and I bought myself an aux cord. And I got in the ute and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna plug in this aux port, I'm gonna get on the road, and we're gonna make up for all this lost time. Because at this time, I'd lost like 3 or 4 hours on the first day. And then I'd subsequently lost like, I don't know, however many days on the next day. Like it was dumb. It was properly fucking dumb how much time I'd lost.
Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
Okay, cool. I found the picture. Found the picture. So I've got it ready. Thank you for the follow. So, I get into the car, right? And this is the first inkling that I had fucked up. This is the first, like, up until this point, I had unwavering confidence in my judgment. But this is the first moment that I had an inkling that I may have made a poor decision. And that was when I went to plug in my phone. I went to plug in my phone to charge it. And so I pulled out the cigarette lighter. And you know how the cigarette lighter, you just pull it out and it has like a little plug? I pulled it and it came out. But not only did the cigarette lighter come out, but the entire housing that mounted the cigarette lighter to the actual interior of the car came with the cigarette lighter. I pulled it out and it was attached to nothing. There was no wires. And at that moment, I was just like, I didn't check the wiring on this car. That could be a problem. But I was like, okay, no, fuck it. No time to worry about that now. I need to hit the road. I need to make up time. But at this point, I had a little bit of a dilemma. I had 30% battery. And I probably still had maybe 20 hours of driving to go. 21 hours of driving to go with 30% battery. I was planning on using Google Maps the entire way. But being the ingenious sort of person I am, I immediately opened up Google Maps, pulled out a napkin and a piece of charcoal, because I didn't have a pencil. Piece of charcoal, and I made a quick scribbled note. of all the different towns that I'd need to go through within the next 8 hours and started driving. Because there was some burnt twigs in the bottom of the cab. It wasn't like art charcoal, it was just some burnt wood, Nightfish. Yeah, natural. Yeah, exactly. Now, this was a real problem for me. This was a real problem for me because I was hoping that I could plug in my phone, charge it, plug in the auxiliary, and listen to Spotify for the rest of the trip. That was my plan. And I was just like, there's no way I can drive this far without music. But I was like, that's okay, because I brought CDs with me. I am prepared. So I go to put in a CD. It wouldn't go in. I was like, huh, okay, that's weird. Turns out this brand new CD player already has a CD in it. But it's a CD that is stuck in there. 21 hours of driving. 1 CD. And I mean, any Australian who's watching this, this stream right now will be familiar with what I'm about to say next. And that is, what was the CD? The CD was So Fresh Summer, I think it was 2014 or 2013. Whatever year it was not a good year for pop music. And there was one song on it. Nicky Minaj, Anaconda. So I was then forced to decide whether I would listen to one CD for 21 hours or whether I would sit in silence and drive. So anyway, I put the CD on and I start driving. And it's all fine. I drive for the next 8 hours. Now, actually, no, I think I drove like 13 hours that first day because I left there probably about 1 o'clock. And I stopped at about 1 or 2 in the morning. Like, it was late. It was like well after midnight when I finally stopped. So I stopped in a town up north. And for reference, this is the ute that I'm talking about. This is the ute here. This is the beast in question. What a fucking... It had speed stripes and everything. Like, mate. Summer, So Fresh Hits of Summer 2015. Thank you, Nike. So, I drive until I reach a town called Emerald, which is up in Queensland. So I've covered a lot of distance already, but I've not even really got halfway. Like, barely even halfway. Like, the next day was when I needed to get there because I had that scuba diving booked in for the next day. I needed to get there. I had a massive day, but I was just like, man, I'm fucking wrecked. I can't do any more today. I'm wiped out. So I got to Emerald at like 2:30 in the morning. And I was just like, fuck it. I'm too tired. I can't be bothered trying to find a hotel. So I had packed a sleeping bag. I packed a couple of sleeping bags. So I just pulled out a sleeping bag and I slept. I slept laying across the cabin in the ute. Yeah, Cosby Sweater. Cosby Sweater was the only song on there. Hilltop Hoods is the only song on there that I was actually like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is a banger. Understandably, I no longer feel that way, though. But yeah, so I was sleeping in the cabin of this ute, in my sleeping bag. And at some point during the night, my knee must have hit the hazard lights because the hazard lights were mounted on the dash in the middle. And my knee must have hit the hazard lights and they turned on. And I was just like parked next to this park. Like I was like this little park. There was nobody around, but I woke up and half woke up and the hazard lights were on. I was just like, okay, that's not good. And I pressed it and nothing happened. And so I pressed it again and nothing happened. And now I wake up because I'm like, the fuck are you doing, mate? What is going on here? So I press it again, this time fully, like, deliberately pushing it in. Nothing happens. The hazard lights are stuck on. And so at this point, I'm like carefully trying to push it, like trying to jiggle it around a little bit, but it's completely stuck on. And at this point, I've just had like so much shit going on that I just like fucking rip this thing out of the actual dashboard and unplug the hazard lights completely and go back to sleep. And I don't think about it. I wake up at like maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, right, we got a big day of driving ahead of us. Let's fucking go. Let's hit the road. So I get out of my sleeping bag. I sit up and, you know, basically just fucking start the car and drive. Get to the end of the road and I go to indicate left. Indicator doesn't work. I've unhooked the hazard lights. It turns out, if you unhook the hazard lights, your indicators don't fucking work. Anybody who knows anything about cars right now is like, fucking duh. But I didn't even think about it. Anyway. So, I like stop immediately because I'm just like, I can't drive the next like however many thousands of kilometers with no indicators. That's just not going to happen. So I pull over. I plug the hazard lights back in. And the hazard lights immediately turn back on. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. All right, cool. So I play around with it for a little while and it turns around like the little fuse on the inside of the switch is just like, it's not breaking the circuit properly. So I play around for a bit. I actually get it to fix. I actually fix it. But the problem is that I'd reefed the whole hazard light mounting out of the dashboard so roughly that I must have broken something. So despite my best efforts of trying to put it back in where it was, just kind of fell out. So I just had like lights and switches just hanging out of the dashboard at this point. I was just like, oh, fuck it, whatever. The indicators work. Let's get fucking going. So I keep driving. And at this point, I am so immensely anxious and tired and stressed. I have no appetite. So I basically eat nothing that day. But what I do have is a whole shitload of No-Dos and some energy drinks. Not a fucking good idea. I was like a fucking wreck. I was wired. I was just like, please take note, guys, as well. Especially if you are younger, don't fucking do this. This is fucking stupid. Absolutely fucking stupid what I was doing. Like, absolutely fucking dumb. Really, really poor decision making. So just don't. But yeah, anyway. I was like wired. So I'm driving. And I drive. And I drive. And I drive. And at this point I've listened to this CD. So this CD has been it takes about an 52 minutes or so to play through every song on the CD. I have probably listened to this CD now like 20 times. 20 times. And I had this moment of clarity. I got north of Townsville. And between Townsville and Cairns, I don't know what the fuck it is, but there is just always roadworks between there. And there's like a 6-hour stretch where it's always just roadworks. And I'm like a man on a mission, but I am like so close to the edge. Like mentally, I am ready to have an absolute mental breakdown. I'm wired on copious amounts of caffeine and just adrenaline and stress and tiredness and man, I was in a weird place. It was a weird place. And all of it was a blur. Except for one moment of weird clarity. I'm sat at these roadworks. Both hands gripping the steering wheel, white-knuckled, waiting for the lights to turn green. Meanwhile, pumping music as loud as I can to try and keep myself awake. And there's this big, bearded, 6-foot tall biker looking at me. And we make eye contact. We make quite obvious eye contact. There must have been like some kind of like weird, like animalistic, insane look in my eyes, because he like immediately diverted eye contact. Or maybe it was the fact that I was blasting like my Anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hun. Massively fucking loudly, enough that the car was probably shaking a bit. Just sat, staring, white-knuckled ahead, and a crazy look in my eyes. But it wasn't over yet, chat. It wasn't over yet. Yeah, we are, Mel. I'm going to a wedding next year. Hopefully. COVID permitting. We're still friends. So there's this weird moment of clarity, and at this point I was so deranged. I was singing along to every word. I was singing along to every word to every song on that CD, but not out of enjoyment, out of just like some weird psychosis. And so I drove and drove and drove. And then it started to get dark. And at this point I was just like, fuck man, I need to get there. I need to get there. Like I was so close. I was like on the final stretch. It was just like a few hours away. I'd gone so far. But now it was dark, a new problem emerged. Oh yeah, sorry, Shaden. The radio didn't work. The radio didn't work. Wasn't an option. It was getting dark, but a new problem emerged. I started to notice that when I was making right-hand turns with my lights on, every time I would stop indicating right, my high beams would come on. Which may not initially sound like a major problem, and I suppose in the grand scheme of things, probably wasn't a major problem. But turns out people don't like it when your high beam comes on every 5 fucking minutes. And it may just have been the caffeine-induced psychosis. It may just have been my total insanity from having to listen to that fucking CD so many times. But there was a lot of right-hand turns on the way there. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it might have just been in my head, but basically, in the end, I worked out that if I wanted to get around the high beams coming on after turning right, after I turned right, I would very quickly have to indicate left to make the high beams not come on. And the great thing about this, that I hadn't really taken proper notice of before, was that this ute had been customized. One of the previous owners of this ute had made the interior light, one of the few things that they'd actually done. Actually, no, that's not true. They'd done a lot of things, but one of the few aesthetic things they'd done was they had replaced the interior light with a purple LED light. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. But I made it. I actually fucking made it all the way up to Cairns in this car. I got there about 11:30 p.m. at night. I got there, I checked into the hostel I went upstairs. I met Rosie. And I was just like, I don't feel real good. Because at this point, I had literally eaten, like, no, I think maybe I had, like, a couple of muesli bars. But everything else I'd had that day was energy drinks and drugs. No-dos. Like, I was a wreck. I was just like, man, I don't feel real good. I'm going to go sit outside. I'm going to get some fresh air. And so I go outside and I sit next to this ute that's gotten me all the way up to Cairns. And the contents of my stomach decided to part ways with the rest of my being quite dramatically and for quite some time. I was so tired, man. I was so tired. I was sick. I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. And to the cherry on top, the icing on top of this was this old mate. He's walking along. Midnight. And this fucking smartass, he walks past and looks at me and goes, huh, that's what you get for drinking so much, you fucking dickhead. This guy thinks I'm drunk. Sat in the gutter next to this ute. I look at him. I look at him with so much malice and hatred in my eyes. If looks could kill, man, that guy would have been immediately eviscerated on the spot. Yeah, exactly, Mel. Exactly. That's who it was. You know exactly who it was. And so I was tired, I was sick, but I made it, and the ute made it. And the next day I had scuba diving to look forward to, but it turns out I was still fucking very sick. But I was at this point, I had spent so much money, I had spent so much energy, I was so emotionally invested in this that I was just like, there's no fucking way that I am not going scuba diving. And so we went out. I was incredibly seasick. And I haven't gotten seasick since I was a kid. But, man, my stomach that day, I got seasick. I was sick multiple times on the way out to the reef that we're going to be diving on. But you know what? I had a great fucking time. It was amazing. It was absolutely fucking amazing. But then we had the 2 weeks of driving down the coast of Australia, doing all kinds of fun activities, skydiving, scuba diving. We went full driving on Fraser Island. The whole time accompanied by the haunting melody. My anaconda don't. My anaconda don't. My anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hunt. Man, fuck that song so much. Fucking cannot stand it. Drives me insane. Fuck off, Nike. It would have been hell. It would have been torture. I wouldn't have been able to think. But, amazingly, that ute made it all the way back down to where I live. And I kept it for like, I don't know, a year or two after that. That ute, though, was an absolute fucking disaster. This ute right here. This is an absolute fucking disaster. So, mechanically, it was mostly sound. It turned out that after a while, like halfway on the way back down the coast, it started tipping out oil, because the gearbox sump, the gasket on it went. But that's okay. I mean, you can always just put more oil in there. It wasn't a big deal. And besides that, the fuel pump was a bit dodgy, which is why the cabin smelt of petrol most of the time. But besides that, it was mostly okay, except for the fact that one of the previous owners had just taken it on themselves to not just replace the interior light with a purple LED, but they'd done a lot of rewiring throughout the rest of the car. And man, this thing was an absolute disaster. Absolute fucking disaster. It was horrifying. But, and I mean, Nike, you've been in this ute, right? You've been in the legendary ute. I don't have this anymore. I've sold it now. But it's yeah, you've done Macca's runs in it with me. Yeah, it's true. But this thing ended up dying completely. The fuel pump eventually gave up completely when I was doing my groceries one day. So I opened up the tray of the ute, unscrewed the back plate, pulled out the old fuel pump, went down to the wreckers, bought some new parts, and was sat in the back of my ute with my groceries while the ice cream melted, replacing the fuel pump in the back of it. Like, this thing traumatized me. This fucking ute traumatized the shit out of me. Hate it. But it was fun. And it makes a hell of a good story, and I hope you guys agree. I hope you enjoyed that story.